Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, along with Andrew Moran, Dave Patterson, Graham Noble, and John Clark. And this is The Conservative Five, an online TV production of Liberty Nation News. Progressive lawmakers are having a fit about the newest swamp game, DOGE Ball. Musk and his nerd herd are hammering red rubber balls of truth at the American people, and not everyone is loving the sting of transparency. Let's face it, Musk has the best minds in his stable, and the taxpayer isn't paying a dime to get to the truth. And, you know, Dave, you and I have had back-channel chats on the media's hypoxia over the speed of these decisions. So let's talk about what is going on with their problems with Musk.
Well, the problem with that the progressives are having is that Musk is doing what the people wanted him to do, and what they wanted President Trump to do, and what they have actually wanted every president up until President Trump to do, and no one but Trump has actually pulled this off. And so now you have Elon Musk, who has no dog in the hunt. He just looks for these inefficiencies and the fraud, waste, and abuse. And of course, he's got a target-rich environment. And some of the things that he's finding that people don't really think about much is that you have line items, and they're supposed for expenditures and paying bills, but they all have to have some sort of a payment code. Just like you have your numbers at the bottom left of your checks, there should be a payment code for every single line item that the government actually shells out money for. And what he's found is, and it's almost astounding, it's mind-boggling, that somewhere north of $4 trillion of line items do not have or cannot be traced back to the person or agency or company, or name your favorite, that it actually pays for. And so
that's not a misspoke of Dave. That's T as in trillion.
That's T as in trillion. Exactly right. And so you know, let's be fair. This is over like a number of years, but nonetheless, to have good controls, financial controls in place, you would think that the Department of the Treasury would be the agency that does that, but apparently not.
And it seems like a lot of Republicans from across the board are going with this. They think it's a good idea. I guess they've had some time to get used to it. But let's take a look at this clip of Republican Representative from Texas, Michael Cloud.
Over the last few weeks, the DOGE effort has begun to uncover not only how massive the waste, fraud, and abuse is, but also the extent at which D.C. politicians and too many obstinate bureaucrats have coordinated to create what is essentially the largest money laundering scheme in history. And while Americans have been working to make ends meet, they have been using taxpayer dollars to fund unnecessary, egregious, and even evil things here at home and around the world.
All right, so John Clark, Cloud seems to be, representative of a lot of happy people finally getting some answers. Am I seeing a change in attitudes, at least by Republicans?
Well, I think it's very interesting, and you use the word happy, and I think there is a little bit of indignation as well across party lines, perhaps. And what's been interesting to me is I think a lot of us for a while have suspected something was very rotten in Denmark. We've watched for years now where there just seems to be incredible profligacy and a whole bunch of things in the Twitter files and Facebook and open borders that just didn't seem right. And it probably has been a number of decades of bipartisan spending or profligacy in this government. I think Dave Patterson, when he was at the Pentagon, had a $20,000 toilet seat, as I recall. No, and he probably gold, or made of lithium, maybe. And so, what's striking to me, though, is that there isn't a nonpartisan movement to clean it up. And Vermont Senator Peter Welch this morning was going on again about how unconstitutional this is. And he's a lawyer. And I said, well, how is this unconstitutional? And what have you done in some 30 years in there to actually do anything about it? And that's what a lot of people pointed out about, like Elizabeth Warren and others who are complaining. Well, if there's one thing, it's clear you have no credibility to clean up that which you are upset about a party cleaning it up. And I think it's also pushing a lot of Americans, as they get past the propaganda about how this is gutting programs for the poor and start seeing where the money's actually gone beyond the woke stuff, just literally propaganda against Americans. I think a lot of people in the middle, the working class, the blue collar people who voted this administration in, are watching the numbers and they're applauding. And hopefully it'll become more bipartisan as we move forward and more of the truth comes out.
Okay, so we've heard about the transgender opera and Sesame Street in Iraq and K-Cups costing a pile. Probably Dave was privy to when he was in the U.S. federal government. We're just going to get you, Dave. I'm sorry. But Graham, what is the most egregious discovery so far?
Well, wow. That doesn't really narrow down the field much there. There's so much. It amazes me that just a couple of weeks ago, everybody was talking about USAID and the outrageous projects, some of which you just kind of mentioned there, some of the outrageous projects that USAID was paying for. And we thought that was bad. And at the time, there were people saying, well, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And here we are a couple of weeks later, and we're talking about, forget USAID. That was change that Elon Musk finds down the back of his couch cushions. Here we're talking about, literally billions. And as Dave mentioned, trillions. And in fact, that Dave was talking about the Treasury there. And that's got to be one of the most egregious things, because as Dave said, of all the government departments and agencies, you would think that would be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, it would be Treasury. And yet, they found it's actually, they're saying around 4.7 trillion, again with a T, dollars worth of payments from the Treasury Department that were missing the code that Dave talked about, and they call it a Treasury access symbol. And this Treasury access symbol basically shows which account, the destination of that payment, and they were missing in $4.7 trillion worth of Treasury payments. That's egregious. The one other thing that might be perhaps just as bad, if not worse, is the alleged amounts of money that is being paid out from the Social Security Fund to people who, have been dead since FDR was president or longer. In fact, some of them have been dead apparently before there was a United States of America. And if that is all true, what we're hearing about that is terrible, because look how long they've been telling us that the Social Security is going to go insolvent. And well, now perhaps we know why.
Maybe it won't now. I've been watching a lot of social media response, both sides of the aisle or every side of the aisle. And I find it kind of amusing that people are worried about Elon Musk and his brainiac nerds getting into their business. I'm like, hasn't he been able to get into your business anyway? If he wanted to know what you're doing, he could have already done it. He could have hacked you 10 ways to Sunday if he wanted to. So what are people squawking about? I don't know. Anyway, anybody want to answer that question?
Well, the guy started PayPal. A lot of people forget about it.
He already knows your stuff.
And so he already knows all about your bank accounts. And, but the very idea that, okay, so we've got thousands of, government bureaucrats in organizations like Health and Human Services and the Treasury Department, Social Security Administration. And, between them, they know everything about you. They got your health records. They got your Social Security numbers. They got your date of births. They know about your bank accounts and what money you're transferring around. And, and some of these ladies and gentlemen who, and I use the term loosely, ladies and gentlemen who work for the federal government, some of them may be on salaries of, I don't know, maybe 50, 60, 70,000 a year. Aren't they more likely to try and scam you for a few bucks than the guy who's got $417 billion?
I would think so. And that leads me to believe, what are they going to do with the money, Andrew? Well, they're going to be slashing all these programs and all that available waste. What are they going to do with it?
If I may just quickly piggyback on what John was saying, I mean, I've watched all these hearings and I see all these senators saying the same thing of how, yes, we define efficiencies, but this is not the way to do it. And then you have mainstream networks who are interviewing people who've been affected by the cuts and say, oh, we just put our kid in childcare. We just bought a house in Washington and you're supposed to cry for it. Now to your initial question, according to the US debt clock, they have a widget on there of tracking DOGE savings. And it says that DOGE is saving about $120 billion. But before we went on air, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that DOGE is saving about $50 billion. Now, whatever the case, whatever the final tally is, there's been speculation that Elon Musk is going to encourage President Trump to hand out DOGE dividend checks of $5,000 to 79 million households. Now, this is absurd thinking if this really is going to happen, just because of the fact that you're still having a negative cash flow. If you're giving out stimulus checks, you need to have a positive cash flow. The inflationary aspects of that's also a concern. Until the DOGE and the rest of the government actually balances the budget and starts paying down the debt, these aren't feasible ideas. Now, the one feasible idea is, according to Elon Musk, he wants to cut the budget deficit in half from $2 trillion to $1 trillion. Now, that money, I guess, would go toward, let's say, paying the interest costs. Now, interest costs about $1 trillion. Now, if you're slowing the growth rate of the new national debt, then you're going to have lower interest payments. So that's a net positive, of course, to the U.S. government. But this idea of handing out stimulus checks and expanding government in that sense, it's not really I guess it's the American people's money, but that doesn't work out for the dollars and cents of the U.S. budget. So those are two things that are talked about right now when it comes to what to do with DOGE savings.
I think to Andrew's point is that savings is in the out years. The money that you're spending right now is what you want to stop. And
right. This isn't all sorts of new money. This isn't money coming back. It's just money not going to be sent out.
That's correct. And it's, like I say, it's in the out years. It's not in the year of execution, which is the one we're in. But however, there are $20 billion in climate scams out there that the EPA is trying to just bring back. And now that's real savings in the year of execution. And that's something that's important.
And remember, the meat and potatoes of the U.S. budget, as I've alluded to many times, is both the mandatory side and the interest charges. That's the meat and potatoes that's fueling these massive deficits. You look at the CBO's 10-year outlook, and you're seeing spending at $10.5 trillion. And guess what's accounting for 80% of that? Mandatory spending and interest charges.
That's right. And I think to Andrew's point, there is something that's worth noting in that the CBO numbers and the way they score things, they score it with a fixed percentage of growth, which is 1.8%. Well, we know that that's not true. I mean, it may be under Biden lower and hopefully under Trump higher. People would like to see it at 3, possibly higher than that. But nonetheless, the CBO scores all of these expenditures and all of these financial transactions at a single 1.8%.
Also, CBO does not factor in potential recessions or depressions or health wars into his calculations as well. So that's why a lot of people are always skeptical of what the CBO says about when it comes to deficits or spending or the national debt, because it's usually probably a lot higher than what they estimate, because they typically rescore on the fiscal side of their projections. In a way, they feel like the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, they had to rescore that a couple of times because their projections were a lot lower than what actually occurred, which was higher revenue than what they forecasted.
And the reason that's important is because the Congressional Budget Office is required to score every expenditure bill that goes through the Congress.
All right. Well, hey, whether you like this administration or loathe it, cannot deny things are getting done at a rapid pace. Lots of exposure along with it. Buckle up. It's only been a month. Thanks for watching, and thanks, panel. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform, YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble. We're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation News has its own Roku channel. We can see all of our TV productions. Now, Liberty Nation does not endorse candidates, campaigns, or legislation, and this presentation is no endorsement. I'm your host, Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for joining us today for the latest news and commentary. Your choice for free thinking, free speech, libertynation.com.